Today on the news and why it matters, medical care for babies born alive after abortion is too much, too human, say the Democrats in Colorado. Also, a new national poll gives Bernie Sanders a double-digit lead. Are you nervous yet? We got a lot to get into, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Valentine's Day. I am Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by Stu Burguiere.
Thank you. Yes.
The host of Stu Does America. I was shocked to see you here.
Well,
I didn't realize you were going to be on today.
I wanted you to be my Valentine, and I didn't want to ask
you?
over the phone or text or anything. I wanted to do it in person.
Oh, that's so nice. So you can find Stu. By the way, if you have not seen him on Stu Does America, brand new show that we have on BlazeTV, and you've been killing it.
Yeah, we're up to number 15 podcast in America right now.
Not to brag or anything.
It's not that I watched. I refresh it every 3 or 4 minutes.
I did read also that it is, in fact, in front of the Glenn Beck program.
It is. Like a couple slots ahead of Glenn.
That's a little awkward.
It's going to continue forever. I know it. I've basically, my entire happiness level is now based only on the number on the charts. So as soon as it starts dropping, it's going to be very depressing. But right now it's going up. So I'm just going to ignore it and hope it continues forever.
Help it go up by going to wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to Stu Does America. We've also got Pack Ray from Pack Ray Unleashed in the house. Happy Valentine's Day.
I also have a podcast, by the way, that
Pack Ray Unleashed.
You can go to and
you should
watch and subscribe. Subscribe. Yeah. So
what would be great is if all of these podcasts actually passed the Glenn Beck program on the charts. So if you could help us do that, that would be, just for trolling purposes, it would be very lovely. Thank you for your time. Also, Aaron Colin of theblaze.com.
I'm going to start a podcast so I can pass Glenn. So let's work on that after the show.
You heard it here first. We got a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Parlor. So if you are on any social media these days, you know, probably personally, that conservative voices are being silenced daily by these left-wing tech companies who are, profiting off of exploiting your privacy, your email address, your personal information. And then they silence your voice when you say something that they don't agree with. The right to speak freely has come under assault in places that were designed for us to just share our opinions, regardless of whether or not big tech agrees with us. With no other options, you're forced to play by the rules until now. Introducing Parlor. Parlor is the news and free speech app that will not silence your opinion or violate your privacy for financial gain. It is super easy to use. You can download the app. All you got to do is create your account, and you can post, share, speak freely just like you would do on any other social media app. But you're not getting the big tech censorship. Now, you can't say anything you want. You can't threaten violence. You can't commit actual acts of hate, harass, or commit other crimes. But I'm hoping if you watch the show, that's not who you are, and you're not going to do that anyway. Otherwise, we got a whole set of other problems we need to deal with. You can go to parlor.com, visit the App Store, download Parlor today. I'm on Parlor. You can follow me at Sarah Gonzalez TX. That is PARLER.com. Find it in the App Store and download it. Speak freely with Parlor at parlor.com. Colorado legislators have rejected a bill that would grant legal protections for babies born alive. Yes, I did say literally born alive after a botched abortion. House Bill 1068 threatened $100,000 in fines for physicians who fail to, quote, exercise the same degree of professional skill, care, and diligence to preserve the life and health of the child as a reasonably diligent and conscientious physician would render to any other child born alive at the same gestational age. It also required that any born alive child be immediately transferred to a hospital. Sounds reasonable, right? That we try to save the life of a baby who has been born.
It's worded in such a way that it almost doesn't even mean anything, right? It's such a low hurdle to clear. It should not be controversial in any way, which of course is why they wrote it that way.
Right.
Everyone can get on board with this, right? Democrats, like you guys, I know you're pro-choice, but you can come on board for this. We're just saying if it's born, you have to actually take care of it like it's a human being, which, by the way, it is. That should not be something.
It's not like a kangaroo?
No, it's not.
It's not a cantaloupe?
No, not a Volkswagen.
I would say we should protect kangaroos and maybe cantaloupes as well.
That's true. Good point.
Kangaroos, I think, yes. Cantaloupes, I'm a little bit more torn on, but you can get me there.
Teach their own.
Yeah.
A vegetarian here, I wouldn't expect you to hold such a controversial opinion on cantaloupes.
They're just not that delicious. They're just they all turn white towards the edges and they have no flavor.
So Stu points out that this is written in a way that should not be controversial. It should be one of maybe the only things that Democrats and Republicans can agree on at this point in time. But no, the Democrats in the Colorado House panel decided that it was too controversial. It was too extreme, and they worried that the law would have the effect of limiting access to abortion in the state.
When you're talking about a child being born alive, how does that limit abortion in any way?
It's a great question.
It doesn't even make sense, and it just shows how little they value human life. They don't care. For some reason, they worship at the altar of abortion. I can't figure that out, but they do. I don't know if it's some sort of massive moneymaker for them. I don't know if they get all kinds of money in their coffers for their campaign from abortion sources. I don't know what it is that drives this, other than sheer unadulterated evil. It's evil at this point.
Pro-abortion activists won't give an inch on anything. And this bill from conservatives, this grants that abortion is legal. It grants that people will go get abortions, potentially even in late stages of the pregnancy. And still, the pro-abortion people won't even give an inch to say, if for some reason this abortion does not work and the baby is born, which to them is the bad thing, you have to take care of it. They won't even grant that. And it just shows how extreme it is, because this is not, like you said, it's not an abortion law. This doesn't limit abortion. We're not talking about abortion. We're past the attempted abortion, and now we're talking about a human life. Let's deal with that as a human life and go forward. And now, if you want to give the baby up for adoption or whatever the case may be, if it survives, then we should do that. But this is not even an abortion discussion. So
I'm a little concerned about this as a tactic from the pro-life side, in that, there's always going to be a battle going on when it comes to pro-life versus pro-choice, and where is that battle being fought? And while I really admire the idea that, can we at least set the borderline of when they're alive and walking around and they get their first job, maybe we can't kill them? When does this happen?
Whoa!
I know, it's a crazy idea. I like the idea of setting boundaries and saying, okay, here's our worst case scenario. Once they're born, you'll let them live, right? The problem then, though, is that you're doing an Overton window thing where you're fighting the battle on this line that is so incredibly extreme. Yeah. And the battle really should be being fought the other way. It should be, the American people, generally speaking, support stopping abortion in both the second and third trimester. Republicans have been trying to do these things where they're getting the limits of 20 weeks and some as early as 12 weeks. But generally speaking, the American U.S. opinion is on the side of the pro-life side of the argument, with the exception of that first trimester, which I still want to fight for every single day of. But that's where the battle should be fought. We're taking an issue that is 97, 98% in agreement and trying to fight a political battle and using resources to fight there, where maybe they might be a little bit better used continuing to push that line towards 0 weeks, which is probably where it should be.
Well, let's bring that up, because one of the other measures that failed was a 22-week ban on abortions.
They're doing both.
Right, they're trying to do both at the same time, both separate bills. But, so they did attack it at that part, right?
That's good.
And it is 22 weeks, which, what was it, the 2-year-old, the toddler that was in Donald Trump's State of the Union, wasn't that 21 weeks?
21.
And, healthy child, we've seen this with technology the way that it is now, viability, 22 weeks, that happens. So, Pat, how do you regroup when you're proposing a bill that there be a 22-week ban on abortions and it gets rejected? You can't get it through.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it does show the radicalism of the left and just how extreme they are on this. It used to be, even in the Democrat Party, we want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And now they've completely dropped any semblance of wishing that there would be less abortions. They're full on, we want more abortions, we want them all the time, we love them, we want them at drive-through windows. They just don't stop now. But at least it's exposed them for, the culture of death.
And I think that's, I guess, the point of this tactic. And I agree that there is some concern that we're giving up too much ground with this. But hopefully, by presenting this very reasonable bill, it kind of sets the tone of like, this is what they really are fighting for and how extreme that really is.
Yeah, and I like that. I think I like the dual approach there, right? I mean, one of the things is I think it is illustrating this in a way that maybe people who are outside of this day-to-day argument didn't understand. Like, wait a minute, they're not voting for what? Like, this is, I think this is hitting people outside of this argument a lot because it's so crazy, it's so insane. And if you go back to Roe versus Wade, right, like they set, first trimester can kind of do whatever you want. Second, there could be some restrictions. Third, there could be lots of restrictions. And that's how they set up the trimester system with Roe versus Wade. But the reason why it was set at the second trimester is because viability was believed to be basically the second end of the second trimester. And it's like, well, that's moved way from. It's not even close to there anymore. So it's now weeks and weeks and weeks earlier, and as you say, to 21 weeks even in this case, that line should be moving. It's not, because that's not the way that they thought about it. I mean, again, the move to Roe versus Wade is a move way to the right from where we are now. Way to the right. It's not even close. If we could go back to Roe versus Wade, it would actually be a really positive move for the pro-life movement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys do bring up an interesting point, because you have Ralph Northam, Governor Blackface, who goes on a radio program and literally says we would keep the infant comfortable, but if the mother didn't want us to resuscitate him, I mean, it's tiny enough. It was just born. It's fine if we don't actually, do life-saving measures on a baby that was born alive. And you had the pro-life movement saying, hello, you guys are talking about a baby you're talking about murder at this point. And then the pro-choice movement said, that's not true. We never said that. This is a completely different argument than we're having. But then when you bring that point up in a bill and say, okay, that's fine, we'll call your bluff here, then sign to this that you will make sure that you save an actual human being baby that's born, they can't do it.
A lot of the opposition to it comes from this premise that, well, this doesn't ever happen, which is obviously not true.
Right, then you shouldn't have a problem signing it.
Right, but they're trying to say, well, it's never happening, so this is just a show bill. But again, like you said, they should. If it's not even going to happen, what does it cost you to sign that? But it just goes to show they will not give 1 inch. That's why presidential candidates can't even say any kind of limits on abortion when they're questioned about it. They have to dodge that question, because if you say anything that even tiny bit limits abortion, it's almost disqualifying.
And, I mean, you had Andrew Yang, who, rest in peace, Andrew Yang's campaign, but you had Andrew Yang who came out and said, I think that decision should be up to a woman and her doctor at any point in the pregnancy. I just don't think that we should be celebrating it. And he was harshly criticized by the left just for saying we probably shouldn't be happy about it. It's incredible.
It is. This is an incredibly extreme territory they've taken. I mean, we've talked about the stat on it's 84% opposed by the American citizens. This is not a mainstream position. Sometimes I feel like with abortion, it feels like we're the weird ones sitting over here, like, I don't know, we're so stodgy in our wanting people alive thing. Where it really, when it comes
to old school,
I know, so old school. But really, we're in the majority especially when it comes to these issues. I mean, this is ridiculous. Buttigieg had the same type of thing where he couldn't bring himself to say any restriction at all. And it's so fascinating to see the arguments that they bring up, which are constantly based on personal liberty. Their arguments are, look, you just have to be able to get in the way of the doctor and the woman. No, we can't. We could never do something like that. That's crazy. It's like, well, wait a minute. You are requiring all sorts of things. You want to run our healthcare system completely. You want all sorts of things to be mandatory for kids to be able to go to public school and all of these other different things. And it's like, well, how can you have that opinion? And the bottom line is, it's not real. They're not making a personal liberty argument at all. They're making a political argument. They worship at this altar of pro-choice for whatever reason. And that comes down to, I think, pressuring every single one of their politicians to take these massively extreme stands. I mean, even Gabbard, who came out and said, I don't know about the third trimester, they're never going to talk to the woman again.
Remember when NARAL used to be considered radical? They used to shun the NARAL events. Now the NARAL events to a Democrat, it's like going to Disneyland. They love it. It's the most mainstream thing they can do.
So true. When we come back, a new national poll gives Bernie Sanders a double-digit lead. Oh, we'll be back in a minute.
Or is it a good thing?
Is it? Yeah, let's have that discussion. We had that discussion. All right, before we get to that poll with Bernie Sanders having a double-digit lead, I want to tell you about home title lock. So you probably think if you have a security system in your house, you know, you've got the cameras, you've got the keypad, you can arm it when you leave, you think that your home is safe. But you're not taking into account that there's this new thing called home title fraud, which the FBI calls one of the fastest growing white collar crimes right now, like in the entire country. And people can actually go online and go hack into where they keep all of the home titles online and they just steal it. They just like forge your signature and they steal all of your equity. These guys actually had an FBI agent come in and actually they did it to you.
Yes.
They showed you how they just went and stole your home title.
I don't know about this happened to you, Pat, but they sent me the paperwork before they told me it was coming. So I just got in my email, there's this piece of paper that had my home title on it with like a fake signature and a fake, like, I'm like, what is this? And like 10 minutes later, like, oh, by the way, we're going to be sending you some paperwork showing you how this gets happened. I'm like, well, you need to tell me that first. But it was so easy. It's just a couple of forms.
Yeah. And our friend Jason Buttrell, you know, he goes on the dark web for who knows what. But he's like, oh, yeah, they have home titles on the dark web for sale for like $40.
Yeah.
You don't want that to happen to
Buttrell's
you.
having people assassinated all over the world.
Is he?
Dark web. Oh, yeah.
I have a couple names I could give him.
Oh, really?
I mean,
I wasn't trying to
hello.
interest you in
I didn't
business.
realize we were on air. You got to protect yourself. You're not going to be protected by an identity theft program. Banks don't have anything to protect you, but Home Title Lock does. You got to go to HomeTitleLock.com. We got you 60 risk-free days of protection. You can enter in your address over there and see if you've already been a victim. That's the only way you're going to know. Don't find out before it's too late. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. That is HomeTitleLock.com. So a new Morning Consult poll found that Sanders has a 10-point lead over his closest challenger, of course, Joe Biden. Sanders is at 29% support, followed by Joe Biden at 19%.
Would you say, of course, is appropriate with Biden in that one? I was not an of course on that one.
That's fair.
He is. 19% is actually a pretty good showing for Biden right now, I feel like. That's actually a good number.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't see Buttigieg. He did well in New Hampshire, right, and Iowa, but I don't see him leading nationally.
Yeah, look, you win. You could make the argument he had the best results of the first two states, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he did technically win as of the count right now in Iowa, and he finished second, a strong second, closer than most people, including myself, expected. I thought it would be more like a 6-point race, and he only lost by 2. So he's actually done really well. So there's an argument that momentum carries you, and unlike a Klobuchar, who also had a good result in New Hampshire, Pete can raise some money. I mean, Pete's got the cash to actually make this into a legitimate campaign. I would say so far this is sort of a disappointing result. Where did he come in on that, third?
No, Bloomberg came in third at 18%. And this doesn't even...
Buttigieg was down
Buttigieg
near
is
like
at
11, right?
Buttigieg is at 11.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, and Warren was at 10. So that's how Buttigieg at 11, Warren at 10.
And do they have Klobuchar even listed? They even ask?
Yeah, she's at 5,
Klobuchar's at 5.
Just kind of goes to show how much of an aberration that New Hampshire result is. Like people are kind of hyping her like she became a real candidate, and
I think that was just her hyping herself.
well, maybe.
We did it!
And everybody's too scared to tell her anything otherwise because she would scream at them.
She may stick around for a while because the quote unquote moderate lane, if we want to go this way, has, I guess you could say Buttigieg is in it, you could say Biden's in it, you could say Bloomberg's in it, you could say Klobuchar's in it. By the way, none of those people are even close to moderates. We should point that out. That's a very important thing to understand.
We need to find a new word. I don't know what it is.
I know. It's like, I don't know. The old school Democratic side, I mean, like, even they're liberal on that scale as well. But I mean, Klobuchar is she's sticking around to see if everyone else collapses. You could make a real argument that both Biden and Bloomberg are going to collapse, right? And
you think that about Bloomberg?
I don't necessarily think it, but you could certainly make the argument. I mean, they're just starting to release his 60-plus women who have accused him of sexual harassment. Like, Can he survive it? I mean, we've seen Democrats survive blackface and stay in office, so he could. But that combined with, stop and frisk and so many other problems.
Racist stuff is going to hurt him.
I mean, how long do you think it's going to take when we get to these Super Tuesday states where you start seeing ads with Michael Bloomberg's endorsement on the stage of the Republican National Committee of George W. Bush is going to take? I can't imagine the Democrats do this. I think they would only do it out of desperation, which is a really strong Sanders showing. I think the clearest case here for Bloomberg is Sanders wins in Nevada easily. He gets another boost and then somehow wins in South Carolina, knocking out all those other moderates. And then there becomes a one-on-one choice. Is it Bloomberg or is it going to be Sanders? And at that point, you might get enough Democrats to say, I just don't want a socialist. I'm going to go this way. But Bloomberg's argument is basically, this has worked out perfectly for him, right? He wanted chaos. He wanted Sanders. He's getting both of them. Where Klobuchar could at least make the argument, okay, let's just say the Bloomberg thing blows up because he's so not he's not a good fit for the party. He's a bad guy. He's a billionaire, all these other things. If Biden's gone too, her versus Mayor Pete, right, is doable. I mean, she lost by 4 points to him in New Hampshire. Yeah. Any race that Buttigieg can win, she can win. And she probably is a better candidate, at least on paper. So I think that's her argument to stay in. But she doesn't have enough. She doesn't have enough money to make this into a big campaign.
Yeah. That's why I think Bloomberg is not going to flame out. He's just going to keep pouring money into this thing, and he's kind of executing what I think Biden's campaign wanted to on some level, which is if you limit your exposure, then you can kind of just float along on reputation, what people kind of think about you. And if he does that long enough, then he might outlast somebody like Biden.
How is it you guys are completely ignoring Tom Steyer? I mean, the guy, you talk about charisma. Am I right?
I mean, those ties are pretty good.
He's the billionaire with a thousandaire personality.
As we talk about this, it just shows you they've got nobody. There's nowhere to turn in the Democrat Party. I mean, they've got two socialists near the top, at or near the top, in Sanders and Warren. And then you've got socialism light with everybody else. You've got some form of radicalism with all of these people. There's just no place for a moderate or a conservative Democrat in the Democrat Party, and they've told us as much. When just the other day, Sanders said that if you are pro-life, sorry, there's no place for you in this party. JFK could not be a Democrat if he were alive today. I mean, being dead, he can't be a Republican either. But he could, if he were alive today, I am positive he'd be Republican.
Being dead, he can vote Democrat.
That's
right.
True.
That's my thought as well. Well, Pat, you mentioned before the break, do you think that it would be a detriment to Donald Trump to have Bernie Sanders as the Democrat nominee?
Would it'd be harder for him to win?
For Trump to win?
I'm not sure. I have a hunch that it's going to be easier because it's the clearest choice that the American people could possibly make. You're going capitalism, or are we going with socialism? And Trump will, I think, do a good job of pinning that to Venezuela, Cuba, Soviet Union. He's good at that kind of stuff, and he won't shy away from that.
The Soviet, you mean the popular honeymoon spot?
Yes.
The USSR. Aaron, your thoughts?
I think you're probably right that Bernie is a little bit easier because that contrast does sort of scare off some of the more moderate Democrats who might say, I really don't like Trump, but I don't want my whole world flipped upside down. But I think we do have to be careful about, underestimating him. I think Trump's campaign will do a good job and will have to be very aggressive in calling out those extremes and attacking, because I think Bernie Sanders will do his best to sort of not moderate his views, but he'll hide the uglier parts of them to the point where people will just view him as the Donald Trump alternative who will give us, free stuff and better economy, supposedly, that he'll say. So you do have to be aggressive in campaigning against him. Don't underestimate him, but I do think that's best case scenario.
All right, back in a minute.
Interesting. If they were showing more energy, like setting all sorts of things.
Hey, before we go into overtime, I would like to let you know this is actually our last overtime session for the show. Yes, the show's being canceled. I'm just kidding. We're actually expanding to an hour in front of the paywall. So we're going to do a full hour for everyone. It will be streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere that you get it now. You'll still get it on audio podcast, but it is going to be a full hour. Those of you who don't want to listen to us for that long, you can still just tune in for the 30 minutes. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. So make sure that you tune in for that next week, starting next week. Also, don't forget, especially if you're watching this on YouTube, just write this down or remember it if you have a good memory. Go, as soon as this is over, to go subscribe to Stu Does America. Go to make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcast to Pat Gray Unleashed. It's Pat Unleashed. All right? He's got a new leakages video coming out.
Is that what we're going to do overtime on? Just talking about what happened on leakages?
I mean, now we kind of have to.
Okay, good. That's all I care about.
Get a sneak peek, I guess.